Good afternoon. I know it's one of these things where we're touch out of order because I don't know, that's just the way these things seem to work. My fault. I wanted to actually do something that it's great to see you guys, number one, but I wanted to do something because Carolyn Stewart, who has been our longtime chaplain, is moving into retirement. And in doing so, she's changing position and things that she has done in the past she's not going to be doing. So I want to do this. We're going to probably talk about the chaplain issue at the next meetings, but we're going to, in between, I'd like to do something where we do the Lord's Prayer together, if we can do that. It was probably, they prayed as soon as they hit St. Clement's Island, I hear. So let's pray and do that. Good. So anybody standing or seating, just stop a second. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us to this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And not deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'd like to introduce Anna, our expert, and she's going to talk about some of the programming going on.
Hey, so my name's Anna. I'm actually the volunteer coordinator here, so I'm usually not the one speaking about Riversdale and our interpretation and stuff, but we do have lots of volunteer opportunities. We have tour guides, people who work in the garden, that kind of thing. My coworker, who you might have seen if you stopped at the visitor center first, her name is Tatiana Esquina. She is a museum interpreter, and she's also our marketing manager. Our interpretation staff, none of them are specifically here, but they would be able to talk more about what we're doing in terms of creating a more balanced narrative during our tours and everything, so specifically highlighting more stories about the enslaved individuals who labored here. And then in terms of our general operations, we have tours of the house every Friday and Sunday, so definitely feel free to come back, bring more family and friends for another tour of the house. We're super excited that you guys got to meet V, who's one of our longtime volunteers. We also have large community events that are most of the time free with activities for children and that kind of thing. If you're from here, you've probably seen the restoration that we've been doing. So that took from like December to April. So we're super excited to have people back in the house after being closed for so long. The restoration included repainting, so a lot of the outside was repainted. This room just had its walls repainted, along with the windows. They just got UV inserts, so it doesn't damage the collections. The UV's not coming in and damaging things. So yeah, we're super excited to be back open, having people in the house again, and we hope you guys can come back.
Okay, welcome to Riversdale, and thanks for asking me to talk about the paintings. I'm not an art expert, but I have seen 3 of the paintings that were in this house that are still in the U.S. And there were 63 paintings. They came over with the Steers when they fled Belgium. And because when they went back, England and France were fighting, it wasn't safe enough to send the paintings. They could, be confiscated, or the ship could sink, anything. But anyway, they were here for 16 years, and Rosalie took care of them. And she created in this room, which originally was the room that the paintings would be displayed in. This would be the gallery. But once the family went back, she knew it wasn't, she was just keeping them safe. And they say the smaller ones she would display maybe in the drawing room around the house. But the larger ones, she had a floor built in this room on that side. and turned this into a carriage house. So when you leave out, you're gonna look like from here it's just a wall, but from the outside you'll see where there's a door where a carriage and horses could come through. And so on that floor, the paintings were stored in crates, and every now and then she would have them open, and they would try to see if anything's mildew or try to wipe off the moisture. Now, when I think Rembrandt Peale and Gilbert Stuart, they knew about the paintings being here, because I think when Mr. Steer was here, he showed some of the paintings to them at the Paca House. But when they found out that they were going back to Europe, you know, they kind of begged her, Rosalie, can you please show these paintings? Because if you think about it, there was no Metropolitan Museum in New York, there was no National Gallery in Washington, no Philadelphia Museum. So this is really the first time that this type of Western art was shown in this hemisphere, really. And so, but Rosalie was reluctant. You know, of course, you don't want people traipsing throughout your house, and you got these valuable paintings. But she did relent, and for like 2 weeks, she showed them. And some of the paintings are larger than these paintings. And, you know, it was quite a thing. You know, people at the time wrote about it. But the paintings were sent back through Baltimore, and she found a ship that could take them directly into the Netherlands, I believe. I can't remember if it was Rotterdam, but whatever. And they made them back, you know, they made their way back. And the reason that they needed them at that point was that to settle the estate of, I think, her mother or grandmother, somebody had died. And so they needed to sell some of the paintings to settle the estate. And then they could buy back what they wanted, which, you know, they did. You know, they considered some of the paintings lesser paintings, but I mean, the big ones were really big. And so I've tried to make it my own quest to see as many of the paintings as I could. So I've seen the 3 that are here, and then I've seen the 2 that are the Wallace collection. Are you familiar with the Wallace collection in London? It's amazing. Okay, it's the first ones. I was trying to show you pictures of them. Yes, okay.
That was the first one.
So imagine that painting is about the size, maybe bigger than this painting. So the Wallace collection is kind of like the Walters Art Gallery, but grander. You know, they have a room with nothing but Marie Antoinette's furniture. They have Catherine the Great's porcelain, so it's really, really, you know. And in their main gallery, they have like a main gallery. The 2 paintings by Van Dyck that were here at Riversdale are the centerpieces of it. And it's a couple, a married couple. And you show them, you know, it's husband and wife. That's the husband, and then it should be one of the wife.
Oh, that was the first one.
Yeah, yeah. Can they? I mean, just, you know.
Who was the Van Dyck?
Van Dyck. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because the Walters, I mean the Wallace collection, it kind of parallels Riversdale in the sense that George Calvert was descended from, you know, these Lord Baltimores, but I think this one. But he was the illegitimate, well, what they would call an illegitimate son. So he couldn't inherit the title, but they liked him and he got the money and the education and the other advantages. And then the Wallace collection is the same thing. Lord Hertford had the son out of wedlock, but he, you know, he loved him and he inherited his painting collection. Yeah, Richard Wallace. So if you ever get to London, go. It's a free museum. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Sorry, I just had one question. What's the name of the first picture of the fellow that's going around right now?
The couple, you know, I'm not really sure. I can't remember. No, I mean, some of them I took the plaque, you know, where you could see who was who, but I'm not sure. But it could be Googled. You could Google that. Yeah. So that was one of the ones I went to see. And then I went to Detroit. And in Detroit, you have Rubens' brother, Philippe. And if you ever go to the Detroit Museum of Art, it's amazing. Have you been to the Detroit Museum of Art? You have? And when you go in, they have this big open area with these murals by Diego Rivera showing Detroit like in the 30s and, you know, the auto industry. It's kind of controversial. But they said Edsel Ford, when he was trying to decide who to do these murals for this museum, he turned down Picasso and Matisse for Diego Rivera. Yeah. And this one is, you know, you can see in the Detroit Museum, Rubens' brother Philippe. And then the other one is in Raleigh, North Carolina, at the North Carolina Museum. And it's the one in our parlor that's Romulus and Remus, you know, being suckled by the wolf. But it's interesting because that one was donated by the Calvert family member, but the North Carolina Museum doesn't give it full attribution to Rubens. They say attribute it to Rubens and possibly his workshop. Okay? And then the last one that I saw is in California at the Getty Center. And that's the one we have over our mantle, which is the animals going into Noah's Ark. And so it's very interesting because the way they have it displayed is in the center, they have a big picture that was painted by Rubens and Bruegel. And so Rubens and Bruegel painted together. They work together. And then on the side of the painting, they have our painting on this side by Bruegel. And then on the right-hand side, they have a painting that's done by Rubens. And when they analyzed those two paintings, they realized not only did they paint together, but they shared materials. It's from the same piece of wood. So it's really interesting. And they don't put that on the, like where you would read it. But one of the docents, just, you know, when I told him I wanted to see it, he told me the story about it. So it's very interesting to see it. Those are the only ones that I've been to see. I think some smaller ones are still in the U.S., but in the family, you know, the Calvert family members. So, but hopefully I can go and see as many as I can. Most of them, I think, are in Europe. So, any questions?
Has any published the inventory of all those things?
Yeah, we have a list. There was an article. Actually, I had all it sent to me before I did this talk, so I could make sure I had everything down. So there's a list.
But with photographs?
Not with photographs, because this would be like from the time, you know, in Rosalie's time.
This is
Yeah.
the back of the Mistress of the Riversdale.
Yeah.
But no one has any file.
That would be interesting to do that. Anna, we should do that. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right.
All right, so, but the first, what I'm going to do for a few seconds here, this isn't a formal meeting, but what I want to do is capture a few things about what's going on with Ark and the Dove to keep all the members, not just you all, but all the other members that we can now send this out to. I think we're becoming of the age where we have to send these meetings out to a lot of other people that aren't going to make these. I mean, we have people in San Diego and Texas and all the rest of the places. They're not going to make these meetings, and they're not going to see us. So I did want to start by number one. I wanted to introduce our council members, because they're the ones that are making everyday work, every meeting work. I mean, they're taking their time etc. And I wanted to ask them to stand up. And the first one I'm going to ask has left because she wasn't feeling well, Cindy Johnson. So I'm sorry to Cindy, who's our treasurer. Carlton Hoskins, I don't see was supposed to be here, probably got tied up with the kids. And Hugh Marbury, I want to say, is our chancellor now. It's raining too. Okay. And the other members of our council are Deanna Poling, please stand. Peter Perry, you guys can stand for a second longer. Peter Perry, Michelle Nash, Billy Jones, and their cousins, by the way, Billy and Michelle. Like all of us are. And Heidi Eigelhart. Did I miss anybody? No, thank you. Could we have a round of applause? Obviously, I really appreciate all their helps, etc. Now, I'm sorry, we handed this over to the folks at Riversdale, so they got through that. We've had quite a series of high water marks here and coming. It's I really want to go over a couple of them because these things are not going to happen every year or so. First is our membership. I want to push on membership hard, and I want to introduce something that we call the 45 and under. Getting people younger, no, I was going to pick on Carter a second there, but not quite that young, but getting younger people, like these two gentlemen right here, I mean, they're proof that there's an interest. And they helped put together the whole program a year ago, 2 years ago. And they found, Asa and Luke, we found that there is an interest if you started earlier, if you talk about it in your households, if you talk about it with your children, etc. I know we've got a couple of your grandchildren and child going on a trip here pretty soon that we're going to be able to take, and I'm going to talk about. And so we're really excited to do this at a rate that I think we can say is safely really easy to do, $300. And not including, again, there's $100 of all the paperwork and stuff we have to do to get it through and signing and all those kind of things. But besides that, we're talking about look at your families, look at your nieces and nephews even, et cetera, and start tying them back in. So when we send emails, et cetera, and they'll see them, or whether they're around or they're near here, and we've got 2034 coming up, which is a huge date. Of course, it's 400 years of Maryland. So we've got a lot of kind of big things on the horizon here. So you'll hear more about that from us in the emails and that sort of thing, and at some of the meetings. But it isn't a lot of money when you think about $300. It's getting less and less every day, isn't it? Never mind. Well, no politics. I don't know whether you guys in the Constitution there says we cannot discuss politics or religion as council members, which I think is a brilliant idea, actually. Okay, 2 weeks. A group of us, 13 of us, are going to actually head over to make the trip with 25 other people with Jay Griswold's group. We're all going to Kipling Hall to celebrate the 400th signing of the Charter of Maryland. And over there we're signing an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with Historic St. Mary's City Commission, Maryland Center for History and Culture, the Kipling Foundation, and the Colony of Avalon Foundation. Okay, so that's the 5 of us are in this MOU together. And I'm quoting from the document so we know what we're going after. We agree to collectively work on and share interests in the Calvert family and their legacy, colonization of North America and the founding of Maryland. The Transatlantic Commission connections past and present. The memorandum confirms our shared commitments to future exchanges and expertise and joins activities with respect to institutional missions of shared interest and a collaboration on the special urgency by the approaching of the 400th anniversary of the founding of Maryland. This is put together by John Seidel. I don't know, some of you have met John, and he is now head of the Maryland Cities Commission, was at Washington College for many years. And Dr. Miller, who I thought was going to be here today, but obviously didn't make it, he will be kind of pretty involved with that, I assume. Our treasury right now, we have $710,000 after giving away $25,000 already this year, so plus cash and for $14,000 or so, and so we're in great shape financially. We have put a committee of 5 together that Bill Jones and Diana Poling are on. That we're making sure that we're making good decisions in the future, a committee, rather than just sort of going off and deciding, hey, let's just give somebody some money. We're going to be careful, not spend more than 5% of the funds that we have, and in those ways, probably continue to grow the investments, et cetera. So. Technical things. We are going to take on something we've been meaning to do for years, ever since I got in the group 7, 8 years ago in council. Mr. Marbury very nicely has offered for Coisen & Coisen, his law firm, to take on the rewriting of the Articles of Incorporation, the bylaws, and the Constitution. And if you guys know anything about managing these things, we're talking about 25 pages of all sorts of things that are going to have to be looked at, and some of them are going to have to change. And it's by laws that have changed since 1910 when we put these all together. And it's a big undertaking. So we'll get Carter on that committee. We'll probably finish by the time he gets to high school. And so I really want to thank Hugh for that. Very, very nice offer. And all right. All right. At this point, then, I'm going to move to talk about what we really came here to hear today, which is the parallel lives and legacies of Peter Paul Rubens and George. What's his name? Never mind. Keeping you all on your toes. You guys want to stop that one and then start the next one, or you want to just keep right on rolling? Just keep right on rolling. Okay. I got to look for my. All right. Just want to make sure it works. All right. Let's back up one. So I think it's really odd at this point in history when somebody like myself can do enough research and point out similarities between these two individuals whose descendants many generations later came together in this building, in this house that we're in, and we're here to enjoy it. Number one, maybe look back and say, what if they never met? What if the Steers never made it to the United States? What if the Calverts hadn't done what they were doing? We'd be standing on a piece of dirt if we were standing. I mean, it's just, to me, incredible. These principles that we have, these two gentlemen were peace-loving men in the 1600s. Everybody else was at war. They worked their whole lives for a peaceful generation, a peaceful world where there's certainly anything but peace at that time. It's a time when kings and queens were the only ones that could rule, with lineage was determined by power rather than anything else, by marriage. And I'm giving this talk as there are too many similarities that we'll see between these two people. I just found it was fascinating to watch this as I read over multiple pieces of material that both of these people were going around the world at the same time. Okay, George Calvert. Sir George. There he is. So I guess that's the same picture, actually. All right, on this one, I land here from Caroline. This is George in this house, and Rosalie Steers from Henri Steers and Maria Louise Peters. Okay. And this is where the economics come down from their side. George, how many people are actually from that line at this point? How many people here are from those lines? 1, 2, 3, 4. Bill, you're not? No. Hugh? Yes. Heidi? Yeah. And, okay. That's Peter Paul Rubens. By the way, my grandfather he was in Paris one time, and he walked into a train station where a guy was making a painting of Peter Paul Rubens, a little later than this one, but he was copying a painting. So my grandfather bought it, and this sat in our living room. Not quite the size of these, but it sat in our living room all my life. And my dad kept telling me, and like this became really curious to me over time. What was interesting about this, and that's why I think we should be handing down all this information to our next generations, and who this guy was. But I only knew Peter Paul Rubens as the painter. And here's the descendancy from Peter Paul Rubens. Starts up here. Don't have the same kind of slide, I apologize, but starts up there. And this is me, way down here. Anyway, from all of this. And this is Caroline, who I pointed out, married Thomas William Morris. I guess where I got my name from. Anyway. Okay. Backdrop, 1600s, times of powers, bloodlines, convenience marriages. They're all at a peak in Europe. England, there's James I, who was James IV before that, and Charles I, his son. Netherlands, Albert and Isabella. Maria de Medici, you remember the Medicis from mostly the Italian world, and then she got kicked out and Richelieu sort of took over. Spain, and Philip II, III, and IV. Now, there won't be a quiz on all this stuff, but as you can see, it is not the Europe you know today. A couple of pieces are together. You don't have Italy together yet. I don't know how they got Venice over here. They moved it at some point, I guess. The Swiss, the Netherlands are up there. This is Flanders, where an interesting story. And in this area, you have these wars that are going on. That I'll cover in a second. They're just going on forever and ever. If you have a little dynasty, you want another dynasty. You want to marry. You want to get married to somebody who'll bring in some more money, land for you, et cetera, and or make an alliance. Okay, I missed the slide. I'm sorry. Yeah, 30 Years' War. Okay. You guys know about the 80 Years' War? Well, this was a component of the 30 Years' War. It was 1848. Remember, this is when they moved all the pictures back to Europe because it had sort of settled down. But it was really, you had people like France, they did this side till 1935, and then they moved over to this side. Or they had Bohemia. They were good to 1920 on one side, and then they joined the other side. This is all the Protestant states, basically, the Roman Catholic states, coming out of the Holy Roman Empire, etc. England's on this side until 1930. So it's an evolving situation. I mean, it's really hard if you all can put yourselves in these folks' picture. Where are you going to be? And what kind of decisions are you going to make at courts? That kind of stuff. Peter Paul Rubens was born in Westphalia, which is Germany now. And his parents, Jan and Maria, were also from Antwerp. They'd had to move out of Antwerp for a problem, and they moved back to Antwerp. In Antwerp, they were converted to Calvinism, and that wasn't popular, and so they had to go leave Antwerp and move to Cologne. And I think we're starting to pick up something that we're going to hear again, from the Calvert side. And the two children are moved back and forth. Finally, at 12, he moves back to Antwerp and goes back to Catholic. There's George Calvert's early life, and I'm not going to read all this stuff because I think it's more important is bring out the highlights. So, born in Yorkshire, England, a farming family, had bloodlines back to Henry III as well as at first. And his mother had bloodlines back to Edward and all the way back to William the Conqueror. But another interesting thing, parallels, they originated in Flanders. So the Calverts moved from Flanders over to England. George was born a Catholic. He was forced to change to a Protestant at an early age and was sent to a Protestant tutor. And he was taken into Oxford and graduated at 14. Then he went to London at the Lincoln's Inn, which I guess it's a law school, and got his law degree. And he fell under the tutelage of Robert Cecil, and we've heard this from Dr. Miller on our last presentation, so I won't overstate this, but Robert Cecil was a very strong, funny-looking man with a hunchback, but he was good at keeping secrets and good at what's the movie recently that's been on, Dana, that you really like? The movie the series that's been Wolf Hall. Wolf Hall. Take images of Wolf Hall and think about what these guys go through on a daily basis. It's really something. So he was the Secretary of State to Queen Elizabeth, who then passes away, and James, the son, takes over. And he is managing all this international affairs, etc., for Cecil. He's performing assignments in multiple languages, capable of taking notes in most of these languages, and for the Royal Court of England and from many other countries. And he took this series of missions around Europe to really help mature him and get him to his next spot. And in 1612, Cecil dies. He has to scramble then because everybody's fighting for this thing. And he doesn't win the Secretary of State. This George Villiers, George Villiers. Villiers. Is that how you pronounce it, Dana?
I can't read it.
Villiers, okay. George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, is appointed. He and James I were really tight, evidently, but George just couldn't stand him. So, similarities. Calverts were originally from Flanders, as were the Rubens. They were both Catholics, then they weren't Catholics, and then they were Catholics again. Both were from upper middle class backgrounds, but they weren't nobility until they eventually earned nobility through gifts from the kings. Both had a really good long trip to get them used to traveling in Europe. And both spoke English, French, Spanish, Latin, or Latin, probably wrote Latin more than anything, in Italian. That is very, very unusual. You gotta be pretty sharp to do that, period. Much less in those days. So, like I said, there are a lot of similarities. Rubens, he first went to Mantua. Mantua is where Italy comes up in the boot and starts spreading out. Mantua was right in the middle of that top section, so most of the world has to move through Mantua that goes in that direction. Very powerful. It's the court, Duke of Mantua is Vincenzo Gonzaga. He's a patron of the arts, and he has a better collection at that time of art than anybody else but the Vatican. And Rubens has really grown into a handsome, charismatic, talented, and respected by others, etc. And Gonzaga sends Rubens on a trip. And having read this trip, it was a miserable trip of many, many, many months of many complications in getting through. They used to have an awful lot of stops that they'd have to pull out paperwork and show and all that kind of stuff. And it took him almost 9 months to get to Madrid, but it really taught him a lot of lessons. Then he aligns himself after Mantua. He aligns himself with Albert and Isabella, the Archdukes of the Spanish Netherlands and Austria. And he becomes a court painter as a diplomat. He gets married, has 2 children with Isabella, and he restarts his life in Antwerp. He goes back and he though he's on the Archduke's payroll, he sets up his own studio back in Antwerp. And he is becoming the most sought-after painter in Europe. His typical scenes are large-scale altarpieces, mythological and historic sceneries, portraits and religious paintings, and then sensual figures. I mean, I think he broke the mold. He started that whole process of bringing in much more of the bodies, etc., that they, I guess, Puritans previous to that didn't paint. Adoration of the Magi. Now, these are very tough to see in these lights, but it's one of the most important works he ever did. It's in the Prado. If you've ever been there, when we went to the Prado, I was amazed at how many pictures there were. And these are not small paintings. Elevation of the Cross, this is a 1611. This is one of his, as he's starting to come around, his first real big works. Descent from the Cross, 1613. So Calvert's an assistant at this point, Secretary of State to the British Crown, and then Secretary of the State. They made him secretary finally, and heads foreign correspondence. Rubens has become the leader, and he's also become a diplomat. Now, when you paint, you get to go to various heads of states of the world. And while he was there, he was able to help Albert and Isabella and different people that he was working for understand what's going on in those courts and relay that back to their courts. So he's a spy. And he's on their payroll, and so he's becoming, I don't know, one of the original spies, I guess. They both bought property and started their own dream houses, Kipling Hall and Rubens' house. Anybody been to Rubens' house? Besides us, me, Dana and I? It's beautiful, absolutely stunning. There's a picture of Rubens' house. He put this thing together, beautiful gardens, right in Amsterdam. And it's not his last house, by the way. And then Kipling Hall in England, where we're going to be. And they have beautiful gardens as well. Oops, sorry. Beautiful gardens of Kipling. Remember, this is all going to be online probably within a week, right, guys? Okay, good. Okay. 1620s. They are really in their full bloom at this point. They're both part of the 30 Years' War. This is a big war. I don't know, I never imagined this, but the 30 Years' War killed between 4.5 and 8 million civilians and soldiers. A lot. It's an enormous war. Rubens paints the Medici cycle in Paris. Marie de Medici has lost her standing, but he wants to bring her back in strength. Her son, Louis XIII, is taken over, and there are 24 paintings. 24 paintings in this group of Marie, her life, and how he imagined it, and how he took it up to a very glorious thing. That was her birth. Yeah, and these are, I mean, you can see these are at what, 14 feet high, 15 feet high, something like that. Yeah.
Where are those?
These are in Paris. Yeah, they're in Paris somewhere. I don't know which one. Maybe I'll have it here in a note somewhere. Okay. And then this is sort of near the end where Louis the 13th comes. But these are, and he does this all within 2 years. Does 24 paintings all within 2 years. It's incredible. Meanwhile, George Calvert, now Secretary of State, James I, now being Protestant, his son is looking for a wife from the Catholic side, and they're looking in Spain, and he wants to go over and make an alliance. Well, this Buckingham and I might be ahead of myself on this. Okay. Parliament is scared to death of more Catholic influence. So this concept that James I had, that George Calvert now has to back, is not going well in Parliament. And so his grasp here is starting to fall. Calvert's life, unfortunately, begins to change as his wife has just passed. And this is when James I recognized how important Calvert was and gave him the 2,300 acres in Ireland and named him Lord Baltimore. He was that devoted, etc. I'm not sure it was the best piece of property in the world at the time, but it was a gift. And Calvert was getting increasingly isolated from Parliament, and about then the Prince of Wales, Charles I, and George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, they wrestled control of Parliament from James. Without consulting anybody, Charles I and this Duke head for Madrid. And they want to try to marry this infanta Maria Anna and make this alliance with England and Spain. Well, unfortunately, the whole thing blew up. It absolutely got rebuffed. It invokes hostilities between Spain and England. Must have been a charmer. And they return to England, where Buckingham dismisses the treaties with Spain, summons a war council, and looks to France for a new match for Charles I, the prince. At this point, James gets pushed aside. Lack of interest in George Calvert's decisions, etc., is gone way downhill, and he resigns. Luckily enough, he negotiated a sale of his position, so there was some money there because he was about to lose a big income. And okay. George then sets his sights west. And he'd listened to the stories of Jamestown and stuff like that, and he'd been dabbling in investments in the New World. He purchased interest in the Virginia colony, substantial position in the East India Company, trading company, and then he buys the Avalon Peninsula in Canada, which ends up being a disaster, unfortunately. He ended up putting more money into that, but he finds that everybody talked to him about how nice it was in the summer. It wasn't very nice in the winter. So, he gives that one up, and he travels to Jamestown in 1629. In Jamestown, he isn't looked at on a positive light. There are rumors of him of interest in more property, etc., and they don't want to share anything. And he is Catholic, and they are Protestant. So here we go again. They're fighting over that. He goes home, leaves his wife and servants behind for the next boat. Unfortunately, this boat was lost at sea. So he's self-described as a man of sorrows. This has been a bad time. Lost his political standing, lost major investments, and he loses his wife. But Charles I turns around and grants him the Maryland Charter. He doesn't get it because he dies about 2 months ahead of us. He dies on April 15th. The charter was given on June 20th, and that's why we're one over. Okay. Meanwhile, Philip the Fourth of Spain knights Rubens for all his work on behalf of Spain and his work. He also opens diplomatic relations with Balthazar Gerbier of England. This is a deputy of this Duke of Buckingham who Charles Calvert doesn't like. Anyway, Gerbier is the Duke's personal art connoisseur. Through Gerbier, the Duke of Buckingham buys all of the treasured collection, believe it or not, of Rubens. So here, George doesn't get along with him, and they make this great deal. Rubens makes this great deal to sell everything to Buckingham. Just about then Buckingham, who must have been full of himself or something, he goes in and he fails in 2 battles against Spain, and he gets assassinated in 1628. Rubens now goes to the Privy Council of Spain, travels to London to negotiate the Anglo-Spanish alliance, the Spanish match that we were talking about earlier that didn't happen, and he gets it signed. So he gets the Spanish match when Charles I and Buckingham couldn't get it done. Okay. And on behalf of James I, Charles I, the son, knights him. Knights Peter Paul Rubens in the English courts. There might be a second reason for that. This was 9 panels in the banquet house at Whitehall that Rubens did for James I. Has anybody seen this? I certainly haven't. Took years, obviously, but it was it's quite a painting, and Rubens' first wife dies, and he remarries his niece, have several more children together. She was quite the model for him, quite a while. He buys an estate outside Antwerp, Pristine, does even more productions, and this workshop is just flourishing and has over 20 people. Have we heard earlier, Anthony Van Dyck was one of them that was collaborating with him. Well, Anthony Van Dyck was a student. Abraham de Penbeck, Franz Lichtich, Peter Van Mol, and many others were in the same studios with Peter Paul Rubens. I mean, he is the man at this point. Anyway, unfortunately, he passes to gout from a heart attack from gout in 1940. And at the end, he was credited with 1,600 paintings and 600 tapestries. Tapestry at that point was called a cartoon, believe it or not. I don't know how that gets down to our day and age, but that's what they called them, cartoons. When they were designed and not finished yet. All right, I'm wrapping up. Both were born to bourgeois, middle class, and identified Flanders as their motherland. They were polyglots. They spoke 5 languages, wrote in 5 languages. They excelled in their professions, law, governance, while very adroit at key diplomatic circles of the day. Both built beautiful houses. Both Catholics, then not Catholics, and then back to Catholics. Both served in privy councils of the major European countries, Spain and England. Both were involved in the Spanish match, one successfully, and well, not successfully, but it sure ruined his reputation, and of course the other, it made his reputation. They were both knighted by the same king, James I, for James I, and Charles actually did the knighting for Rubens. And the reason that we're here today, these two lines met, married, and flourished in this new house at Riversdale. It's time for dessert. Billy, what can I help?
On the documentary that's produced.
Yes. Okay, so, sorry, I passed by that one. When we're over in London, in Yorkshire, the first day we're going to be involved in the MOU and the signing, re-signing 400 years. And then the second day at Kipling Hall. And then the second day, we're going to, in the evening, see the premiere of the movie that they have put together, the Liberty of Consciousness, that Jay Grizzle, Mark Letzer, and this guy Drew Perkins, who's a great photographer. He's Ken Burns of his time right now. And they've done a phenomenal job. It's a 90-minute movie. So it'll be shown, premiered that night at the Richmond Theater in Richmond, which is the second oldest theater in England. Now, it should be coming back here. There should be a premiere here. I have not heard the timing on it. So we'll have it back in Baltimore. I think they're working on the Senator Theater to do that. And I'm sure MPT, barring funding problems or whatever, MPT will be pushing this to us.
What's the subject now?
It's the whole history of Maryland from George Cowder, because that's the first scene. I don't even know what the ending is. They did a lot of shooting in St. Mary's, at the Maryland Archives, at MCHC. So I'm not sure how far they go on the time frame. It'll be a pretty good movie. It's just great that those guys put that thing together. You gotta give them a word. Anybody else on anything else that I can help with, or let's see what the story is with dessert. And thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.